All right, welcome everybody to the Heart Coherence Collaborative. We are so excited to have Stephen Washington with us today. He's come highly recommended from our good friend Lee Harris. He is an amazing being who is the movement master. So we're so excited to have him with us. Lee's going to read his bio, but first we're going to dive into the heart together. So if everyone could focus your attention in the area of your heart and imagine that your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area, breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. Try a pace of 5 seconds on the in-breath, 5 seconds on the out-breath, in and out through your heart. Now, as you're breathing in and out through your heart, I want you to think about a time in your life where you felt tremendous amounts of joy. Maybe it was doing something you loved as a kid, maybe something lit you up over the holidays. Whatever it is, as you're breathing in and out through your heart, just really be in that moment of joy. See what you saw, feel what you felt. Just be there now.
And next, still breathing in and out of your heart. Think of a person or a pet that you really appreciate, that's easy to love, and just feel into all the reasons why you love and appreciate this being.
As you continue to breathe in and out through your heart, I want you to think about a moment in your life where you felt some laughter. Maybe you laughed out loud. Maybe you did something funny. Maybe somebody you know did something funny. But as you breathe in and out through your heart, really just try to be in that joyous moment of laughter.
And next, continuing breathing in and out of your heart. Call to mind something you received, either a gift or a compliment or appreciation that really meant a lot to you, that made you feel known and seen or appreciated. And smile as you imagine receiving those words or that gift.
All right, so thank you everyone for being here. How we're gonna do the format today is Leah's gonna read Stephen's bio, and then Leah and I are gonna ask Stephen some questions, and then you guys will all get a chance to ask Stephen questions. So as he's speaking, come up with as many questions as you have, and we'll call on you when we open it up. So.
Okay. Stephen Washington is a movement master, author, and recovery advocate who is passionate about helping others navigate towards a happier, healthier life. His lifelong love, excuse me, his lifelong love and a key foundation to his own spiritual fitness is movement. And he firmly believes our relationship with our body is vital for emotional, physical, and spiritual health. He is a certified Qigong instructor and a Pilates teacher and has taught individuals and groups for over 20 years. Stephen's writings, articles, and life experiences created the inspiration for his first book, Recovering You, Soul Care and Mindful Movement for Overcoming Addiction. He hosts a monthly Heart Mind Moments YouTube series with videos on physical, emotional, and spiritual health, and his movement and mindfulness work has received over 1 million views on YouTube. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Leah and Kyle. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, we would love to just start out by hearing a little bit about your journey, and what brought you to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah, I'll try to be as clear and concise as possible. I'm 51 years old. I am a person who has lived a life. I think I've been blessed to have lived more than one life. My life before recovery and now post recovery from addictions. And I grew up in a small town in Connecticut. My father and my mom and my sister and I, there was a lot of trauma in my family, a lot of unprocessed trauma. And the way that my family members dealt with trauma was to drink and to use drugs and to do anything that they could to self-soothe, self-regulate, and to not feel what they were feeling. And so it was a very chaotic environment to grow up in. And me being the sensitive child that I was, it was very difficult, very challenging. And I did a lot of things to help myself self-regulate. I didn't know I was self-regulating when I was doing them, like when I was biting my nails and rocking myself to sleep, or later on eating myself to overeating to change how I felt. And eventually, by the time I had my first drink at the age of 15, my first drink of alcohol, I felt as though I had found something that was remarkable. Because up until that point, I felt like I'd been holding my breath, trying to get through life, trying to manage the unmanageable. And so when I had my first drink, I just knew that that was something that I would do again because it changed how I felt. Like I said, it helped me feel as though I could breathe. It helped me feel as though I could be in the world and connect with people. And at my core, I am an introvert, and that helped me to be more extroverted, and it helped me feel as though I was a part of instead of apart from. And so I chased that feeling for the next, I don't know, 20 some odd years. And I used alcohol, I used drugs, I used food, I used cigarettes to change how I felt. It helped me to live my life. It was a solution for a very long time for me. And I did so without great consequence for a very long time. And then eventually I started to feel the consequences. And one of the things about addiction is that it's something that one does repeatedly despite negative consequences. I got to the point where I had lost the choice in the matter as to whether or not I was going to drink to get through a day or do drugs. And so finally, back in 2002, I realized that I really couldn't imagine my life going forward with a drink. And I also couldn't imagine going forward without a drink. So it was a really strange place to be. And I was incredibly desperate. And luckily, I had a friend who was in recovery. He was in 12-step recovery, and he was a beacon of light for me. He showed me what a life in recovery could be like, because at that point, you know, guys, I was waking up in the morning, oftentimes feeling disappointed that I woke up. I would look at myself in the mirror and I couldn't recognize who I was looking at, because I was doing things that I just had never thought that I would do. And so I'd reached the point where I just couldn't go on any further like that. And my friend was just the most amazing example of what a life without the chaos of drugs and alcohol could be like. And so I just followed his lead. I went to my first 12-step recovery meeting, and I just continued to go over and over, day after day. And I pieced days together, then months, and then years. And now it's been 20 years since I've had a drink or a drug, and a little over a decade since I've had a cigarette, which is incredible because there was a time when I couldn't get through a day without doing any of that stuff. And my life has changed a lot. My life is not perfect by no means, but up until this moment, I have yet to find a reason to pick up any of those things in order to get through a day. Because if I have a problem in my life and it's something that's been challenging for me, if I were to drink or use a drug or smoke a cigarette, I'd have that original problem, and I would have the addiction to reckon with again, the active addiction. So what I can say to you is, so many gifts have been given to me during this process of recovery. And a lot of the things that I share in my book, Recovering You, are things that I learned along the way from my time in 12 steps, working with a sponsor, my years in therapy, the books that I've read. And then a lot of what I learned was at 10 years of sobriety. At 10 years of sobriety, I went back to school because I'd seen that, when you change your life, when you put down something that's killing you and you pick up something that's that's life enhancing and nourishing, your life can change and your life can get bigger and it can grow. And so I went back to school, and I wanted to be a traditional Chinese medicine doctor. And I moved from New York to California to go back to school. And I was so certain that this is what I was meant to do. And imagine my shock and surprise once I arrived and started to do the program, that I started to have this inkling that that's not what I'm meant to do. And that created a situation for me where I was filled with fear and shame and worry and anxiety. I honestly thought that during that period of time that I could potentially have picked up again, that I could have potentially relapsed, because what was coming up for me was so difficult. And one of the things that helped me during that time were the practices that I learned in Chinese medicine school, like Qigong. And the Qigong, what it did for me was it gave me space in my body. It gave me space in my mind. It helped me to zoom out and look at the situation that I was in and get a different perspective. Because when we're in the middle of a crisis, it's really hard to see beyond where you're at. And so the Qigong, as well as other practices like the self-massage and the deep breathing and meditation, as well as creative writing, just helped me to get perspective. And it helped me to move energy that was in my body that was stuck in my heart. We're talking about heart coherence. I had a lot of energy stuck in my heart. I had a lot of turbulent emotions. And so the Qigong helped me to move that energy throughout my body, helped me to relax, because I was anything but relaxed at that time. It helped me to focus my mind and realize what exactly was most important. The most important thing was that I felt happy, and that I felt joyous about what I was doing, and that I felt confident in where I was going, and that I was clear that I wasn't running from something, I was actually going to something. So I knew from that moment that I was going to use these practices for the rest of my life. And I knew that it was part of my mission to share what I was learning with others. And eventually, years later, I found myself doing work with my husband, Lee Harris. We went on tour and taught workshops and retreats. And I brought this medicine to the retreats, and I saw how it was impacting the lives of other people. And eventually I wanted to bring my world of recovery and these practices together. And so I created an online course that was basically the foundation for Recovering You. And then it was a blessing to have the opportunity to write this book and put all that information down in the book and share it with the world. And that's what's brought me here today with all of you. I feel it's a tremendous gift anytime I get to talk about recovery, because recovery is at the center of my life. And I know that some of you may be able to identify with what I've been saying about my addiction to drugs and alcohol and cigarettes, but some of you might not. That might not be your story. You might know someone, though, who is in the throes of addiction. Or you might be dealing with another dependency that is leading you to feel as though life is unmanageable, whether that's a dependency on work or food or gambling or relationship. So many things, or social media. There's so many things that we turn to that are outside of ourselves in order to help ourselves feel better in our own skin and in life. So this book and the practices in the book is really for everyone. It can help you to manage stress. It could help you to enhance your body, mind, and spirit, and to reinforce the connections between your body, your mind, and your spirit, and to build a life that's more conscious and joyous. So that's basically my story in a nutshell.
Thank you.
And yeah, I look forward to hearing what you want to know from me.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that you said you learned everything 10 years into your sobriety, because I'm coming up on 7 years this week. I feel like I still have so much to learn. So I could definitely relate to so much of your story. It was incredible to hear. And the one thing that I just want to ask you is, you talked about addiction as like being something that you're repetitively doing, regardless of the harm it's doing to you. So in my recovery journey, I was able to convert like my addictive patterns to positive addictions, but it was like still the obsessive and compulsive nature. So where I will do positive things, but I'll do them like an addict. And so I'm curious, has that went away for you? Have you been able to address the obsessive and compulsive nature in addiction, or do you still have that?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that question. Yeah, for instance, like what you're saying, exercise is something that's healthy and that's something that we should all do. But there's a way that we can also overdo something as what seems to be benign as exercise. So it's all about finding some way to moderate and regulate. But yeah, I still have challenges at 20 years of sobriety, things that I work at in order to find some level of balance. It's easy for me to overdo something. For instance, what I'm working with now is just sugar. I love sugar. And sugar is in everything, apparently. And I am finding a way, my own way, to bring balance in my body and my mind around my relationship to sugar. And it's interesting. It's not something I would have ever imagined I would be dealing with at the age of 51 and with 20 years of sobriety. But I tell you, what I have are amazing tools that I could use and apply it to that. That's one of the great things about my recovery, is that no matter what comes up for me, because what I've noticed over time is that addiction kind of changes face. It morphs. It shifts from one thing into the other, and it might not be to the same degree of severity. It might not be something that's going to kill you like drugs and alcohol can and destroy your life in an immediate sense. But there are a lot of things that can chip away at the quality of our life. So the work never ends. It never ends. And what I've been able to find, and I'm really grateful about this, is a way of doing this work in a continuous fashion with a level of joy and self-compassion and hope.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer.
I would love to hear more about your journey with movement specifically, and if there were
Mhm.
any parts of that that happened even before you got sober.
Well, that's a great question. Thank you, Leah. I've always had a relationship to movement. When I was a child, I found dance to be my movement medicine. I was doing energy work on myself long before I even knew what energy work was. I just felt drawn to movement. I felt drawn to dance. And I would dance around my living room. I turned the music on and just dance. And that, I think, was something that helped me to survive the traumatic experiences I had as a child. And it led me to an amazing community, which was a creative community, an arts community, where I found my tribe. Because I was already feeling, I already had this intuitive sense that I was like an alien on this planet. And then when I found the creative people, I felt like, oh, they're like me. I'm not so strange. I'm not so weird. And that was exactly what I needed at that point in my life. But what I can say is, even with all of that, even with that community and that tool, there was still more work to be done. There was still more healing to be done. And ultimately, that led me to going into recovery, and that led me to all the practices that I learned later on that have helped me in recovery. I'm so grateful that dance has been a part of my life, and I'm so grateful that dance led me to Pilates, which is another mindful movement practice that's given me so much. It's allowed me to connect to my body in a very intimate way, to build awareness around what it's like to be in my body, to accept my body, to strengthen my body, to build connections between my body and my mind. And then the work that I began to do with the Qigong was just an extension of that. And I feel really blessed to teach a community of people every single month, my SWE studio, where I offer a Pilates and Qigong fusion class and other wellness content, because I know the power of movement. I know how movement is a window to understand and explore your inner world. One of the things that addiction does is that it steals parts of us, and it prevents us from going deeper and doing that inner work. And a lot of us have trauma related to our bodies. And so movement, mindful movement, helps us to connect to our body in a really safe way, and connecting the body with the breath, moving energy through the body in a very gentle way, so that we not only get to understand what we're feeling physically, but also what we're feeling when it comes to our emotions, which are, it's all energy, right? The physical energy of the body, the emotional energy of the body, and also the mental energy of the mind. And so I find that these practices are great windows into deeper parts of ourselves. So I can't express the importance of movement enough in the work that I do.
Thank you, Stephen. So one of the things that I'm most grateful for that I got out of recovery programs is learning that like you can only keep what you have by giving it away. And so we learn how like the root of a lot of our suffering is the self-centered fear, the resentment. So I'm curious for you specifically, because it's one of my favorite questions to ask like an alcoholic or an addict. What has service meant to you, and how has that changed your life, helping others?
Service has been everything. And what it's done for me is helped me to get out of myself and to help another person, and to be there for another person and support and hold space for another person. It's so easy to be caught up in your own problems, your own suffering, and think that you are terminally unique and that no one could possibly share the things that cause problems for you. But when you connect to other people, when you are of service to others in any way that you possibly can, and you get a chance to listen to them, to be there for them, to connect, we understand that we are more alike than we are different, and that we all have the ability to help one another. And I always found that when I do service, and I love the way that 12-step has taught me ways to be of service, whether it was to run a meeting or set up for a meeting or sponsoring or even being sponsored, because I feel as though working with a sponsor is you're being of service to the sponsor as much as the sponsor is of service to you. There's so many ways that we can help one another. And I love how that work in 12 steps in that community has shown me how I can serve others in other areas of my life, whether I am online at the grocery store, how I interact with the people who are there to help me and help us, how I can be of service to people, even when I'm driving my car and interacting with people in traffic. How we treat one another is really important. And just to consider the feelings and the life circumstances of another person, even if you don't know that person, and even if your connection to them is quick and brief and in passing. So I think it's true. You can't keep what you have unless you give it away. And there's so many ways in which to give it away and share it. It's quite a joyous experience, right?
Yeah, this group was actually created from that, teaching of service. So this is one of the gifts of recovery.
I would love to ask you, it's so rare that someone gets sober at all, let alone stays sober for 20 years. What do you think are the few things that you've done pretty consistently that have helped you achieve what is, it's a remarkably low amount of people that manage to stay sober for any length of time, unfortunately.
I kept coming back every day. I didn't give up. That no matter what happened, whether it was something horrible like losing a parent, or what I experienced, what I told you about 10 years of sobriety and having that crisis and feeling extreme panic and anxiety, I didn't pick up. Because if once you pick up, it's done. It's a done deal in terms of the onslaught of suffering if you pick up. Because like I said before, not only will you have the original problem, but then you have the problem of relapse again on top of that. So those are simple things that I've done that have helped me to be in this recovery game for as long as I have. And also I've asked for help. It started with myself asking for help, and it's continued with me asking for help. And it's amazing. I always think of asking for help as the gift that just keeps on giving, because there's just constant opportunities to ask for help. And just when you think you've gone a certain distance with asking for help and that it's gotten easier to do, there's like another layer. There's like another level of the work that it takes to humble yourself, to ask for help and let someone in and know exactly what's going on with you. Because it's easy to put on a show of, oh, I got this, I'm fine, everything is fine. It's another thing to be able to say, I'm really struggling right now. I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm really hurting. Can you help me? And like I said a moment ago, when we're able to do something like that, it not only helps us, but it also helps the person that we ask to help us. It really is a win-win for everyone. And also, I think what's helped me stay sober for this amount of time is I've always tried to keep a level of joy and levity about it all. One of the things I've loved about being in 12-step recovery is from the first day when I walked into a meeting, I love that people laughed. There was so much laughter in the room. And I think that's surprising for a lot of people. I think when we look at television shows and movies that depict 12-step recovery, it always seems kind of morose and just, I don't know, just weird. And I always think, no, that's not really quite what it's like. There's so much more laughter and joy. And I know that for people who are new to it all, it's hard to imagine being able to laugh about your experience, some of the dark experiences, but the more time that you get and the more distance that you get from those experiences and the work that you do and that ability to zoom out and see the bigger picture, you suddenly change your relationship to your past, to your story. And there's an opportunity for lightness and joy and humor to step in, which is something that I think makes me more optimistic about the future. And joy always makes things better. Yeah, so those are the three things that I think have helped me a lot.
Awesome.
Thank
We
you
would
so
love anyone that has any questions to raise their hand and we'll get to you. It's interesting what you were saying about like this perception of, AA. I used to personally think that somebody who was an alcoholic was like under a bridge or something like that. But it actually blew my mind when I first started going to AA that it was like a lot of my friends my age. And I actually just got to attend a wedding this weekend where everyone in the wedding party was sober. There was 50 people there that were sober. And it's like, it's more common than people think,
Yeah, and I also want to say too that my path has been sobriety, has been complete abstinence, and I'm assuming that yours is too. And that's not the case for everyone.
Mm,
So what I want to say is that no matter where you're at, that there are different ways in which to bring about more peace and balance in your life. Everything that I teach, and just like everything that's taught in 12-step recovery, that saying of, take what you need and leave the rest is really important. Each and every person has to do what resonates with them and feels right for them. But I just wanted to give voice to those who might not be ready to just stop everything altogether or commit to a life of sobriety. I just wanted to say that out loud.
thank you for saying that. That's important. And while we wait for anyone to raise their hand, just raise your Zoom hand. Oh yeah, no, what I wanted to ask you was, how can our members support you? How can we follow you? What offerings do you have that our members could get involved with?
Yeah, I have a website, StephenWashingtonExperience.com. And on my site, there's a link to platforms where you can buy my book, Recovering You, on Amazon and other booksellers, or even local booksellers as well. You can also get my audiobook on Audible, spoken in my voice. There's also links to all of the social media platforms where I have free content. I make a lot of free content on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. And then also there is my membership community, SWE Studio, where I create a Pilates and Qigong fusion. And I create other wellness content that help people to take care of themselves. It's all at the base of it all, at the essence of it all is self-care, caring for the body, mind, and the spirit. And I think of the work that I teach in the book as ways to build a self-care practice for yourself. And then what I offer in my membership community is a way to expand upon that. It's a really fun community filled with people of all ages, shapes, and sizes. I think my youngest member is in their 20s, and my oldest member, I think, is in her early 80s. So there's a place for everybody.
I have a question that comes up just in thinking about your path through childhood and trauma. And when you start an addiction, I think whatever shame is there from childhood gets perpetuated into new things to be ashamed about. And I do think there is a really important part of healing that is somehow getting away from a feeling of shame. So I would love to hear what have been your best antidotes for shame.
Hmm. Well, I love what Brene Brown says about shame, that shame needs three things to survive: silence, secrecy, and judgment. And one of the things that has helped me to move past shame and to change my relationship with shame has been to share it, and to not just share it with anybody, right? I think people have to earn the right to hear your shame. And I think that's one of the things that I was able to experience early on in recovery when I started working with my first sponsor, my friend who was my friend Craig. He's still my friend all these years later. Just to have the opportunity to share things with him that I'd never shared with a single person before in my entire life, and how incredible that was. How I suddenly felt as though the shroud had been lifted off of me. So that was really powerful and important. And it continues to be powerful and important when I continue to share that honestly about things that I'm holding inside that I might feel shame about. I not that I don't feel shame anymore, even 20 years later of doing this work. I just know how to do that dance with shame in a different way. Shame and I do a different two-step than I used to do before. And one of the gifts that I think sharing your shame with another person that you trust is that you get to experience what it's like to share that and not have them judge you, to feel a level of acceptance around the shame that you're feeling, and perhaps even an acknowledgement that, oh yeah, I have the same, I feel the same way. I've had those same thoughts. So if that person can not judge you, it gives you permission to not judge yourself so harshly, which about the shame, the thing that you feel. I also think one of the things that has helped me over time as well is that I understand a bit more about what shame I inherited from other people, shame that doesn't even belong to me. There was a great deal of shame that I inherited from my parents and my family. And through this process of recovery, I've been able to really look at what's mine and what belongs to someone else, and have entered that process of being able to just let that go and give that back to them. Because I don't own it. It's not mine. And it's incredibly freeing to do that. And I say it in a way that might sound really simple. It takes time. It's a process. I kind of feel like my relationship to shame is I take 2 steps forward and maybe a half a step back, 2 steps forward, half a step back. But it's okay as long as I continue to move forward, as long as we all continue to move forward. It's okay if we slip back a little bit because we're only human.
Thank you so much, Stephen. This has been a wonderful interview and feel like we've made a new friend. So we have to
Oh,
tell
good.
Lee, we said thank you for introducing us to you, and thank you everyone for coming and joining us. This has been great.
Thank you.
My-
Thanks,
My-
Kyle and Leah. Thank
Take
you.
care.